I think what we're actually seeing is a different divide. It is a divide between the managerial class and the everyday citizen. So I'll start with Kamala for a second here. So it's less that she is a communist or a socialist. I think that's almost giving her too much credit.
In this video, Vivek Ramaswamy and Jordan Peterson engage in a very enlightening conversation. It's not a typical this person got owned debate that I have on the channel rather often. It's more of a informative, new perspective that I appreciated hearing, and I just wanted to share with you guys because Vivek Ramaswamy brings up some good information about Kamala Harris, which Jordan Peterson then also confirms. Jordan Peterson has had a lot of ups and downs, and I believe right now he's kind of making his rounds on the circuit, in the podcast circuit, so we'll probably see a little bit more of him in the upcoming future. But in this one, Vivek Ramaswamy gives a little rundown of things that he experienced, the pros, the cons, the things that he wishes he would have known before he went into this last campaign as he ran for president, which gives me hope for his political future in the Republican Party, especially if he's able to maintain this type of pace for the next 4 years and he stays consistent to these new beliefs because, you know, a lot of people like to point out his past. And I think this is an important video for us all to check out. So let's go ahead and just get her started.
You spent a lot of time on your presidential campaign, which was quite successful, all things considered, given how relatively unknown you were as a political actor and the complexities of the current political situation. And I'm very curious about the consequences of that. I mean, I did note that, you know, there was a fair amount of, I'm wondering what your relationship is with the powers that be on the Republican side at the moment. I mean, we've seen Trump make some remarkably interesting moves in the past few weeks. I mean, the fact that he's aligned himself with Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, and by all appearances, Elon Musk, who agreed yesterday to head something like a commission on governmental efficiency, which would be, I mean, this is, the radicalness of this can hardly be overstated, right? I mean, RFK wants to, what? He wants to rekindle or reformulate the health and food distribution systems. Like, I mean, that's a major undertaking. And I think he's absolutely right about the health crisis that besets us. I mean, obesity and diabetes are a plague of such catastrophic proportions that they make any risk from climate change appear like absolutely trivial by comparison, insanely trivial. But it's radical. And while Elon Musk is a radical sort of character, and Tulsi Gabbard, again, she fits the same, she's subject to the same descriptive terminology. And it's also interesting that all three of those people are ex-Democrats, right?
That's what I think makes it most interesting. Which you could also
say about Trump.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like Trump is the world's most obvious conservative, quite the contrary. So I'm curious about what you make of what's happening around Trump at the moment and of around Kamala Harris too, for that matter, because there's also evidence that her stance has become substantially less radical and more conservative. Now, you can be skeptical and cynical, and maybe you should be, about how much of that's just surface, but the Democrats did shut out the radical leftists at the convention to a large degree, and much of what Harris has been pushing is much more mainstream Democrat than what you might have expected, for example, if the people like AOC or Rashida Tlaib had got the upper hand, the real radicals in the Democratic Party. So what do you make of what's happening around Trump? How do you feel about it? What potential role are you playing and might you play in the future in relationship to that? And what do you have to say about what's happening with Kamala Harris and the reconfiguration of the Democrats?
Well, look, everything you just laid out, I think, accentuates an increasingly obvious truth, which is that the real divide in this country is not between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, as those words have become less meaningful. You have multiple former Democrats who you named, Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and by the way, somebody who formerly identified as Democrat as well was Donald Trump, now looking at the world in a very different way. On the other hand, you have Kamala Harris in her in her sprint. It's not even a gradual run. It's a sprint towards the center of traditional political content. I think what we're actually seeing is a different divide. It is a divide between the managerial class and the everyday citizen. So I'll start with Kamala for a second here. I don't think the right spot-on critique of Kamala is that she's a communist, right? The policies she's advocated for in the past certainly would vindicate that characterization. She favors taxes on unrealized capital gains, single-payer healthcare system. She has favored bans on fracking, bans on offshore drilling. She was a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, so much so that she wanted to end the filibuster in the Senate. We go straight down the list of that history, and I've done that in other places. But as you say right now, sincerely or not, those are not the views that she's espousing at the moment, for the most part. So it's less that she is a communist or a socialist. I think that's almost giving her too much credit. I think that gives her the credit of being an ideologue, which I don't think she is. I don't think she's particularly ideological. I think she, like Biden, as Biden proved to be anyway, is really just another cog in a machine, right? I think that this is part of, and I think the more Republicans see ourselves running against a candidate and to say that candidate, Joe Biden, when I ran for U.S. president, right, the pledge we had to sign to be on the debate stage was called the Beat Biden Pledge. And I told the then chairwoman of the Republican Party, I thought this was a silly idea because we're not running against Joe Biden. So why are we framing our entire Republican primary endeavor in the context of beating Joe Biden? In the very practical sense that I didn't think we were going to run against Joe Biden and we're not. But even in the deeper philosophical sense that why don't we focus on what other alternative vision we actually have to offer to the people? So I think that's a trap that Republicans would fall into. Now, again, with Kamala to say that, okay, here's everything that's wrong with Kamala Harris, when in fact that misses the point that she's just another cog in the system. We're not running against a candidate, we're running against a machine. And I think we have to understand that. So that is where I think you see a lot of the common threads between folks like, myself to RFK to Donald Trump to Tulsi. We have divergences between us to other more historically traditional Republican conservatives. There'll be shades of difference on individual policy questions on the merits of one form of regulation or policymaking or other. But what we do represent and share in common is a hostility to the managerial class, the managerial administration of America by, I would say, people who are never elected to their positions, the people who we elect to run the government, from Kamala Harris to Joe Biden or anybody else. They're not the ones actually running the government. It is a managerial machine of which they're just a part. That really is the divide. And I think that's what we're seeing in that changing landscape.
It's also strange. It's so strange that it's the conservative Republicans that have found themselves in opposition to the managerial class, because logically, it should be that the conservatives are the supporters of the manorial administrative class.
I think there have been points in history where that's been true, no doubt about it. But I think that that's where these words change their valence and meaning over time.
Right.
The managerial class, I don't use the term the elites really as much as some of my other friends on the right do, because I think that I'm an elite. Elon Musk is an elite, by certain definitions, founders. I think there's a different categorization I would offer between the everyday citizen, the creators, and then this managerial intermediary class, the bureaucrat class, the committee class. And I think there's always a balance of power between all three, and maybe some element of all three is always required in a well-functioning society. But right now, we live in a moment where that balance of power has shifted too heavily in favor of the managerial committee class, and not just in government, but in universities and companies, in nonprofits, in any institution. And I think now is a moment we live in where creators are able to ally with everyday citizens to be able to drive real change. And so that's, I'm a creator by background. That's what led me to run for US president. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, very similar backgrounds as creators who are allied with the everyday citizen to overthrow, in some sense, the managerial class that has a lot of our modern culture and certainly our modern government in a chokehold. And so that's what motivated me to run in the first place. I think it's a common thread that you could connect for some of the other characters you just mentioned. But when I started to become ascendant, it was a level of attack, right? A deeply personal attack on me from 10 different angles. That was the way I dealt with it, was to say, well, I will one by one hit you back 10 times harder, and that's how I'm going to do this. And that is part of me. I'm a fighter, I'm a competitor, but it's not all of me. And I think that one of the challenges, but if you're going to lead the free world, you better be up for that challenge at the highest level, is to show the people that you are a fighter, but while also finding ways to really allow 300 million people who don't otherwise know you to really get to know what's in your heart beyond just your ability to fight. And that is, I think, where I left some room on the table over the campaign that I think is, probably one of my great learnings.
And now that he mentions that, it makes me think about Kamala Harris. And what is she doing to reach the 300 million people that don't know her? And I don't even believe that she cares to do that. I just think of how Kamala Harris is not trying to reach Americans at all. I've seen a few of her commercials on TV. I don't watch very much TV, admittedly, but when I do, I've seen a couple of her ads. They all are full of lies. They still project that Trump is supporting Project 2025. They still project that Donald Trump is going to enforce a federal abortion ban, both of which Trump has denounced and said that he's not going to do. So it's just straight up lies when Kamala Harris's campaign says these things. And so Kamala Harris doesn't understand the people one bit. All she has done is been a prosecutor, which is basically an authority type getting to throw her weight around. She never really gets challenged. I don't think she's ever really been challenged and forced to dig deep and express who she really is, what her own beliefs are. And I don't even know if she really has her own beliefs. To Vivek's point there and Jordan Peterson's point, I think that she is basically just a cog in that machine. I think that was really well put, because the only things we really know or understand about Kamala Harris is that she was brought up into politics by being the girlfriend of a flashy politician in San Francisco or California. She's been underneath this guy's wing and then groomed to basically go up the level to the next level, which ended up getting her to that vice presidential position, even though Joe Biden himself admitted that she's a DEI hire. He said that it's going to be a black woman before he even knew who it was going to be. He just knew that he had to pick a black woman, which is another example of how they're just cogs in that machine, right? Because if there were individuals seeking out the best qualified person to be their running mate based on merit, you wouldn't have a preconceived notion of what that person is going to look like, right? And that's partially the reason, in my opinion, that Kamala Harris has so much trouble speaking, and she ends up talking in these drunken type of word salads that kind of leave people going, what did she just say? I mean, it's like that scene in Billy Madison where Adam Sandler goes on this long speech about the missing dog and finding the dog or whatever, and then the guy at the end goes, "We are all now stupider for having heard it. You earn no points." I think of that scene almost every time I see Kamala Harris attempting to make a speech or doing one of these interviews that truly bear no fruit. And I don't understand who the people are or what the people think they just heard whenever they clap and applause in response. Maybe there's just a applause sign going on above the stage or something like that, and these people are just following like the sheep that they are. And one last thing about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the types of people that they are. They spend their life in government, and somehow they become these super wealthy, living way better than the people that they serve. And I don't think that's the proper type of leader that the American people need. It was Donald Trump who donated his paycheck. It was Donald Trump who lost net worth over his 4 years. Real, true leaders typically make a sacrifice in one way or the other. He was actually shot in the head. There was a second assassination attempt just this week that was thwarted by the Secret Service, thankfully, only minutes before Donald Trump would have been in this person's line of sight. And there's potentially a third assassination attempt that nobody's talking about that happened at a rally where approximately 20 people that were in the crowd in the same little area felt some type of effects. They don't know exactly what it is, but they think that it might have possibly been some type of chemical attack. But it's just curious that it was so close to Trump and that it was so condensed into one little area. There's other theories on what type of weapon possibly could have been used. And that's all I'll say about it. But you don't hear Kamala Harris out here listening to the people and magnifying any of the American people's voice. All you hear is her in the mainstream media echoing talking points that are none other than orange man bad. They don't have anything good to say about themselves. They don't have anything positive that they can project from their own beliefs, their own principles, their own policies. It's always make the other guy look bad, and the people will vote against him or her. And at the same time, enriching themselves. I mean, Kamala Harris wore $800 earrings to the debate against Donald Trump. Either that or they were listening devices. Regardless, it's a disconnection with the people, and it's an in your face that I'm rich and you're not, and you're going to pay more taxes, and that's it. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. If you'd like to support the channel, I've added 3 designs to the shop below, and that's a way for you guys to help support the channel and get something in return. There's also memberships that just basically supports the channel. Once I get to 10, I'll have, it's a minimum requirement from YouTube, but once I get to 10, your guys' names will be on display on my channel page. And of course, if not, just watching the videos, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff is a great way to help support the channel. Because without your help, I would still be working outside every day in this Florida heat, rather than chasing my dream, working at home, being able to raise my dogs and my chickens and be with my family, which I am so grateful for this opportunity. Truly thank every single one of you for watching to the end. I don't say this very often, but I really do mean it in my heart, and may God bless you, your families, your lives, your finances, all that stuff. And with that, I'll just see you guys in the next one.